Welcome to the Be That Healing Girl podcast. We've got some fun things on this episode, and we're going to talk about the main topic, which is reminders for when you have your anxious attachment trigger. Okay, so if you're the kind of girly that your relationship anxiety gets sparked, it just starts to kind of go off the rails, and you can't help but overthink. Your overthinking kicks into high gear, trying to figure out, what did I say wrong? What did I do wrong? Or maybe it's you are checking your phone 15 times in 5 minutes. You cannot put your phone down. Or maybe it looks like you can't focus with work. It takes you 10 hours to do 2 hours of work. Or maybe you can't even enjoy things with your friends or your hobby. Or, in my case, when I was in this extreme stage and early in my healing journey, like, what hobbies, right? So if that is you and you can kind of feel yourself getting on the hamster wheel and you just need a reminder before you get on it or get taken away by it, then this is the episode for you. And if you're new here, my name is Claire. I'm a relationship coach and I love helping high achieving, high performing girlies, whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, maybe you have a business that is really successful or multiple businesses, you've got investments, or maybe you have letters behind your name. Maybe that looks like you have an MD or PhD or something of that nature. And even though you are highly successful in that area of your life, you are struggling and it feels like a little dirty secret that you are overthinking and second guessing, and it for your on the outside, maybe even your inner circle is confused about how you can be so well achieved and so successful, but also maybe a little bit of a mess when it comes to your relationship. So if that is you, you are in the right place. And hitting the 5-star review, I just want to say thank you ahead of time for doing that. It means so, so much. It's like a high five that whenever I go and check, it's just so reassuring to see you guys enjoying it. And it takes 2 seconds. Thank you for doing that. And a couple things that I want to get into before we go into deeply the topic and give you a little update. And I was thinking about this because this has been something that has really made an impact on my overall anxiety. Of course, my relationship anxiety. And that is, I've been doing a little gut reset for the past, I'd say 2 weeks now. I'm got 2 more weeks. And there has been such a difference for me on so many levels, from my mental state, my mental clarity, from how I literally feel in my body, and how I show up in a relationship. And all of that is connected to how when I really did a hard reset, I think that was in 2022 around my gut. It made so much sense to me. I think I was just kind of talking about it, but really hadn't felt it on a body level, how intricate our systems are. And so there is research out there that you can look at that is, you can see the connection from your brain to your stomach, literally. And so when you don't get that text right away and you feel a pit in your stomach, this is some things that we've been saying. I don't even know how old that saying is. Somebody could probably research it and tell me and DM me. But that saying is millennia old, probably. But now they're seeing that it's not just a saying, but there is science that there's a nerve that connects straight from your gut to your brain. And the more that we find out about the body, which you would think that we know all about the body, but we are finding out things left and right about how our bodies work with our nervous system. But there has been such an obvious connection for me with healing my gut, and it's been going really, really well. A little insight is that I had a lot of things this past couple months that have really shaken up my nervous system. For example, we went from living full-time in our RV for the past 3 years back into our property in Denver, and it's been a whole transition. And to be honest, my gut has not been great. And I just did a poll on Instagram kind of talking about it, and it was not even an hour old, and 35 votes said that you absolutely have gut issues and anxiety issues. And I'm like, not surprised at all over here, because there's that connection. So I feel like I'm going to keep updating you guys. And also I'm looking into bringing some guests and having a deeper conversation around that. But I wanted to give you a little life update because it is really relevant to how we heal, and they are connected. Your gut is directly connected to your anxiety. So more on that coming up here soon. Also, I'll be introducing a fun new segment to the podcast. And I've been noticing that I play this fun game with my inner circle. And it's kind of something that I do periodically, randomly in conversations. And I was like, oh, I should just bring this to you guys because I think you'd have a lot of fun with it. And it can get weird, it can get funny, and it just is a super fun game. So I'll share that a little bit later. But let's dive into the reminders for when your anxious attachment is triggered. And first of all, I want to talk about what I mean when I say anxious attachment trigger. So this is that event that it's like with a pew pew, and you pull the water spout and the water comes out, right? Like, oh, that's a garden hose. Wow. Garden hose, right? You pull the handle on the garden hose and water comes out. That's like a trigger, right? So that is the same thing kind of happens with our psychology and how our anxious attachment can work. We get triggered, right? So it's that moment where you don't get the text, where you feel like you did something wrong, where their behaviors change, and that kind of starts something inside you. And to me, there's actually distinct steps. If you are early in your healing journey, it can feel like one big just calamity, but really there's a domino effect that happens. And so the trigger is like the first domino before you start going into that spiral. And I just want to remind you that why this happens. And so when we'll talk about it in the reminders, but this is not, a lot of times we think this is face value, but why this happens is, well, actually, it's because your body and your mind and your spirit are trying to tell you something. Okay. And if you're a resistant learner like I was, I did not get all the message all the time, right? I was a resistant learner in the past. I had to really fall a few times to really understand what was happening. And why it's so important that we understand our triggers is we have to know and identify what we're looking at. We have to maybe understand what's happening. And if we can do those things, we can remind ourselves before we start to spiral, and it can absolutely be automatic. In fact, this is what I do with my one-on-one clients, where it's not only just being able to identify what to do when that spiral happens, it's all about understanding how to make that automatic. And not just because you know why it's happening, right? And in fact, if you're listening to this podcast or you've been watching any of my content, you're smart. You could probably tell me the very textbook reason why you're doing it. Or you could just say, well, yeah, of course I have an abandonment wound. But there is actually so much more to that, and there's more depth to that. And one thing that I want you to walk away from with this podcast is some solid reminders for when that kind of activation happens. But what I really want for you is to have this be automatic. And again, that's something that I get my one-on-one clients to, because it really kind of takes understanding in depth, and not just from a logical standpoint, but from a deeply subconscious standpoint, why these things are happening. So that being said, let me give you some tips. The first one is when you're in that space, the handle's being pulled, the water's about to come out, you're triggered and you're anxious. The first thing to kind of understand is that your trigger is going to feel urgent, but it's not necessarily true. That's the first reminder. It's going to feel urgent, but it's not always true. And so I also can see, for many different reasons, that there's different areas that our anxious attachment can get triggered. So for example, communication. Maybe you get triggered because something, you feel misunderstood, or you're not seeing eye to eye. That can be a trigger. Or maybe the trigger is you are self-sabotaging. Maybe you are starting a fight or poking a fight. That a trigger can do that. Or maybe you are in the trigger of they're pulling away or they're feeling distant. And this is actually something, all these topics like communication, self-sabotage, anxious and avoidant, these are all standalone topics that I go into in my community in the Healing Girl Gang. We go very much in depth with an educational training, with implementation days, an action taker toolkit, things like communication, things like self-sabotage, things like the anxious and avoidant dynamic. But one thing that is really important that I can give you right now is that understanding that urgency and truth are two different things, right? And what I've noticed in myself, and I can identify this with my clients, is that there's like a flail that happens where I will just do anything to make it right. What did I say wrong? What did I do wrong? Like, I just want to fix it. I want to fix it right now. And that is a reminder that if you're feeling that urgency, it's your fear. That's actually what's happening. Urgency and fear and your ego are all very connected. Your ego, your protection mechanism says, I have to solve this now. And that's not necessarily true. So that's kind of the first reminder that triggers are going to feel urgent, and it doesn't mean it's true. You don't have to go fast. And so the remedy would be to actually learn how to slow down. How do you actually slow things down so that you can be more grounded, more regulated, to self-soothe and understand how to connect with your partner? Okay, something I teach with clients. So that's the first reminder. The second important reminder is that if it feels hysteric, it is historic. Okay. I don't necessarily like the word hysteric, but I like alliteration. There's a lot of history with that word hysteric. But if it feels like, oh my gosh, I call this like my hair is on fire. Like what would you do if your hair is on fire? It's kind of a freak out moment. But what if it feels hysteric? If it feels like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, it is often historic. Okay. And so what I mean by that is what if it feels really, again, urgent, if it feels really big, like the sky, like, oh my gosh, it's so big, right? The sky is falling. It's may not be falling. The sky may not be falling. And what's happening is there is a history of feeling like something really big is at stake. The cost is really high. The stakes are enormous. And if it feels like that, and a lot of times I can just so relate, I just would rather feel in those times of triggers early in my healing journey that I would just rather the earth swallow me up. Like the feeling in my body and the feeling of being in this moment, or the feeling of getting it wrong, or the feeling of they don't get me, or the feeling of losing somebody would feel just the absolute worst. And if that is the case, that is an indicator of something historic for you. Okay, there is a history that you probably have around what feels like a big deal right now. And I'm not saying this to minimize your feelings. Your feelings are totally valid, and your behaviors and your actions may not be. So if it's hysteric, it's historic. It's an indicator of something in your past that you want to look at. And again, that's something that I do with one-on-one clients. Like, it's not just being able to recite your trauma, which I guarantee those of you who have been in therapy for a long time, you can do that. You're able to go and say, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, and I love you so much, but that is not healing. That is reciting a script. So when you can understand and connect the dots from in your subconscious with what you think is happening right now with the history, that's actually one of the pathways and one of the steps to healing. Okay, that's the second piece. The third piece is that, and some of you are not going to like to hear this, okay? I love you. But you cannot out-logic your nervous system, okay? Knowing and understanding, and this is why if you are smart, if you have letters behind your name, if you are a hard worker, you got into the schools, like this is going to be the most frustrating piece for you. You are smart and you do know things, but at the same time, you cannot out-logic your nervous system. And also what is so interesting about our body, like I literally can connect this with our gut health and our anxiety, is that your body is basically a bag of memory and hormones. Memories get imprinted into your hormones and vice versa. So when you have this history or this tendency to react disproportionately to what's happening, then there's a history literally in your body. And it doesn't really matter what you know about their situation or your situation. It doesn't really matter. Oh, well, this makes sense because I da 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 and they blah 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 and they're avoidant. none of that is going to really help. And you cannot outlogic your nervous system. And so knowing what's going on, the logic part of it, the mind part of it is only a portion of how you heal, which is why I use and utilize a holistic approach. You need that. Your mind is only one part of body, mind, spirit. You need the each separate piece, and they need to be working together. They need to be working like a symphony. They need to be, if one's out of tune, the clarinet's out of tune, the violins are going to hear it, right? It's not going to be cohesive. It's actually going to create disconnection, dissonance, discordance, however you want to say it. So this is also why those of you who are really smart, who have a strong logical mind, and your body and your spirit is not on board, again, it's going to feel really clunky around that. So 3 reminders. Let's review them. So if it feels urgent, that's part of it, but urgency does not mean truth. Just because it feels urgent does not mean it's true. The second part is if it feels hysteric, it's historic. All right. Third piece is that you cannot outlogic your nervous system. And, I know a lot of you first, and I could definitely identify with this, that being smart and being able to understand things got you to a certain point, but we can't logic ourselves into connection. That just is not how it works, right? This is like going to a networking event and like saying, I'm going to say beep, bop, boop, 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 and they're going to love me, right? Not necessarily. And we've been to a networking event where it's like that. Like they might be saying the right thing, but the energy is off, right? Like they just want something from you. They want to sell you something. So you cannot logic connection. You cannot logic your nervous system. And it's just important to know that. So a couple things, new little segment. And I went and put this on my Instagram stories. And I feel like this is going to be so fun to play with moving forward. And so the game that I like to play with my inner circle is called Would You Rather? And I love this question personally because, first of all, it's a great conversation starter. So if you have opinions around this, please DM me because this is literally my favorite thing to do. And it also gives you a lot of insight into different people's opinions and how their brain kind of works and their preferences. So you can find me at a dinner party, hang out with friends, at a dinner, I don't know, anywhere. And I love asking this question. It's sometimes just so random. We'll think about something and I'll pop up and ask this question. So here's how it's played. There's only A or B, number 1 or number 2. There's no middle. There's no compromise. You have to say it's either A or B. It's either door 1 or door 2, and that's it. And you have to give your reason. Now, what's also fun with this little part is that I like to talk it out, what's my reasoning for this? It's super fun. So the question, I just got one, and I'll give you an example, just a really simple one, which is, would you rather date a super tall, I'm talking 6'5" guy with a small, or door 2 is a guy that's your height, but like a huge one. Okay. Fun starter. If you're with girlfriends, just ask them that question. It's super fun. Tell me what your responses are. But here's the one that I thought of that was given to me by a person on my IG. Thanks, honey. So would you rather date somebody? Well, I actually changed it up a little bit. I made this in dating relationship context because this gets really fun. So would you rather be with somebody who only eats soup for the rest of your life? Okay. That's door 1. They only eat soup. So if you're like me, I love a good Mexican meal with chips and guacamole and queso. If you're in the girl gang, you know what I'm talking about. I love that. That's one of my favorite things to do is to go to new places, try new food. So they only eat soup. That's door 1. Or would you rather be with somebody who has Cheeto fingers for life? Every day after they eat something, they have Cheeto fingers. Okay, so the answer for me is super clear here, but maybe you're a soup aficionado. Maybe you just love soup and that's all you eat. But the obvious choice to me is Cheeto fingers. And I did think about this as I was getting this together, but oh man, I guess would our clothes get dirty? And would you have to you're wearing a white dress. Like, don't touch me, Cheeto fingers. But like, you can wash your fingers, I guess. Like, my question would be then, do the Cheeto fingers spawn every hour? Like, what happens? Is it just after every time they eat, it magically becomes Cheeto fingers? These are the fun questions that you should be asking with your girlfriends. So to me, the obvious choice would be Cheeto fingers, because I cannot be with somebody that only eats soup. Are you kidding me? Only eat soup. Do you know how limited our restaurant choices are? Do you know, like, soup? That's all you want to eat, soup? Ugh, no, could never do it. So tell me if you agree or disagree. Send me a DM. Let's talk about it. All right. The next piece here is we're going to go into answering some questions from the Healing Girl Gang. And I mentioned this before, but the Healing Girl Gang is my community. We deep dive into specific topics around anxious attachment to help you heal. So it is May. We're talking about communication. If you tend to word vomit, you over explain, you get into fights over, or you don't even know how to ask for your needs. We're talking about that in depth in the Healing Girl Gang, with a masterclass, an implementation day. Basically, how do you do it and what actions do you take? That's the Healing Girl Gang. I'll put the link in the show notes. So when you're in the Healing Girl Gang, you get to ask a question that I answer on the podcast. Super fun. So Shannon says, I come up with scenarios in my head that has not even happened yet. Shannon, you're in good company. When I think about those scenarios, I start to get very upset at my partner as if he actually did those things. I come up with so many crazy thoughts in my head, and I wish it would stop. I've been through some past traumas that has carried with me, which I never thought was there until I got into this relationship. I'm mentally exhausting myself and my partner. I feel in my heart that he is not doing anything wrong, but my mind won't let me relax. How do I get to a place of peace and stop letting what hasn't happened affect me? I'm self-sabotaging myself from past shit. Enough is enough already. So I love this. And Shannon, you're so lucky. The month inside the training, inside the Healing Girl Gang, where we do a training on self-sabotage, this kind of making up fake scenarios is a form of self-sabotage, is coming up. But the first thing that I just want to say is, this is so common. Like, you are not alone making up fake scenarios. In fact, this happens to me still. And you know what happens is I will dream something and then have a mopey morning, which is like so silly. And I think that's actually a really good example, because in your dream, it feels so real, right? It feels so real. And it feels like, I don't know, they want to break up. It feels like whatever. And the thing that we have to remind ourselves is that it's not real, okay? It's fake. It's actually not real. And the best way to look at that is, where is the evidence that supports it? Okay? Like, where is the evidence to show that this is true? And then when you can look at, okay, that's not true, and it's still kind of ruminating in your mind, then there's deeper things that you want to look at, because there's likely a subconscious part of you that has subscribed to that. And what we really want to do is to understand the subconscious reasons of why you are believing that. And so we touch on that in the Healing Girl Gang. And if you are in a like SOS moment, then just reach out for one-on-one. But the first thing is to, where's the evidence? Show me the money, right? Show me the money, show me the evidence that supports this. Because if you can't come up with any evidence, then you're doing what I call, you're scaring yourself. You're doing a good job scaring yourself. And the great news is that if you're scaring yourself, there's nothing to be scared of, because you're the only one doing it. So Shannon, we'll go more into this in the training for self-sabotage. That's coming up really soon. I'm really excited to dive into that. And the first question that you want to ask yourself is, where's the evidence? Is this true? And if there's no evidence, then congratulations, you just scared yourself. That's it. All right? Okay, angels, I will see you inside the gang, or I'll see you on the internet. Mwah.